Hello, my friends. Happy to be back with your vision.blog, and I'm happy that I have here a very special guest. It's Vlad from the company called ZIMT. Hello, Vlad.
Hi, everyone. Hi, Georg. Thanks for having me.
It's really a pleasure to have you here. Vlad, can you introduce a bit yourself?
Yeah, sure. So I'm an entrepreneur. I'm a tech guy. I'm an engineer by training. So I've been working in the Internet of Things space for the last 15 years, building cloud SaaS services. I built three startups, and I've been very much interested in building technical products. So from day one, from drawing on a whiteboard like here, this is really my specialty. Is transform some ideas, some ambiguous problems, and try to find very concrete technical solutions for them. So I've been doing that for more than 10 years, and I think in the last 5 years I fell into the blockchain rabbit hole. I discovered the technology. I discovered Ethereum way before. I discovered earlier than I bought some, but the most important thing is as soon as I really started understanding how it can be used and so on, I really wanted to be in that space. So in 2018-17 I joined a company called Ambrosus, and we did the first blockchain infrastructure, so layer one, that was really dedicated to supply chain, to transparency, to traceability for products, for food, for pharmaceuticals. And I've led the entire engineering and product there for a few years until 3 years ago when I started ZIMT AG. ZIMT AG is essentially a Web3 studio in the blockchain space. So happy to tell more about that in a minute.
And Vlad, you did a very nice project with the Swiss Wine Organization. Can you tell us something about that?
Yeah, of course. So essentially, the starting point was a friend of mine who knew people at the Swiss Wine Organization, and it's always nice to have a glass of wine from time to time. And we realized that Swiss wine is a little bit not so much loved, let's put it that way, internationally. I think very few people know about Swiss wine, and if you tell them, they don't know we have wine, or if you tell them, they will say, oh, Sweden has wine, so things like that. So if you go to Dubai, it's very little known. So that was the starting point of the project, and we were exploring, thinking how technology can help bring more awareness to our nice wines. I think we have very good wines. We have lots of different regions. We have very small vineyards, so I mean it's mostly alpine. So the space available to make wine in Switzerland is very small compared to huge plains in Latin America or China or other new countries. And I think proportionally there could be a lot more knowledge, visibility around our wines. So the idea for this project was essentially to use blockchain technology, to use digital technology at large to communicate more about those factors, about the quality of the wines, about the fact that there's a very limited amount of bottles.
Okay.
So we did a pilot a year ago. I'll show here.
Oh, that's great.
Like any professional, I need to have a bottle of wine under my desk, and the idea was that we created a QR code which is printed on a hologram. We did that with several partners, obviously with the Swiss Wine Association, who is the producer association across all regions of Switzerland. And the idea was to create a unique QR code, a unique digital passport like the Swiss Pass that can be attached to every single bottle of wine throughout the world. And by having that, you see those holograms on high-end expensive products, on very luxury items, and it would be to put that, for example, in a mall, in in Dubai or in a duty-free shop in an airport where people could see it, see, hold on, this is high quality, it's authentic, I will scan this product and such. And that was really the starting point of the project. More concretely, the idea is the following, is that every single bottle of wine has a unique serial number. That's the idea. And this serial number is recorded on a blockchain, so it's digitally notarized. So that means you could not anyone can come and create fake IDs, fake bottle of wines. Only the producer, because he has a private key, and that private key is used to issue the identity of that wine. Only the producer can create new IDs and print them on a label. Then as a consumer, I can scan the QR code. Every single one is different, so that's important. It's not the same QR code on all bottle. Every single bottle has a serial number. I can scan it. I can view nice information in multiple languages about the wine I'm drinking, who is the producer, see photos, videos of the region, which is things that were possible before, of course, but more interestingly, now you can see a digital certificate of authenticity of this bottle, and the idea was for that digital certificate to be an NFT. So you could buy the bottle of wine, you could suddenly start owning the digital equivalent of that bottle of wine. And as we've seen in the last few months, there's a lot of very exciting relationships that we can build between producers and consumers using those technologies, and use the NFT as a one-on-one WhatsApp message, if you want, where we can where the brand can offer all sorts of benefits for the consumer.
So the NFT is a tool that gives the user, the people who drink the wine, more information about the region, about the wine, and also to certify authenticity, that it is really the bottle you bought and not a fake.
That is correct.
So this helps a lot, that you can trust the brand of Swiss wines. And why is an NFT the best solution for that?
So I think one of the quotes I come up with a while ago is that you can buy a fake Rolex in the physical world, but you cannot have a fake Rolex in the metaverse. And I think this is a very powerful concept, because physically we can create better and better copies of things. And even companies that say, oh, this is a limited edition handbag, we made only 100 of them. You never know for sure if that's true. I mean, you trust the brand and you hope they're not lying, but there's absolutely no way of proving if they literally made only 100 or maybe 150 or who knows how many. With an NFT, you have a guarantee that if you have one of them, you know the smart contract, you know exactly how many NFTs exist. So now when you see on a bottle of wine, serial number 2000 out of 5000, you have the digital equivalent of that, which is obviously secured by blockchain. So this is one of the claims that blockchain technology makes possible, to create a very strong proof of that. And even beyond that, I think the point is rethinking consumer engagement. I mean, if you go in a shop, if you go in a very good wine shop, you have thousands of bottles looking at you. And how are you going to select one? Especially if you're not a knowledgeable or an expert in wine, you generally know some regions, and you would go and buy wine from that region. You like Burgundy or Bordeaux or maybe nice Tuscan wines, and you stick to those things. But there's very limited ways for smaller producers to stand out, to tell their stories, because you're busy in a shop, you don't really have time to scan all those things. So how can you make up your choice? How do you know the right wines for you? So that was really the deeper vision of the project, is to start exploring personalization. The more you know each customer, the better you can understand them, the more you can provide a personalized service, right? And I think this is something you mentioned before of record. How can you really understand the specific needs, desires, intentions, preferences of every single one of your clients? If you look at loyalty today, send me your email and you spam 5,000-10,000 email addresses with the same message. You know, that's not always the best.
That's not community building.
Way, right?
And with this, you really can build a community. And this wine you can buy now in the shops?
Yeah, so we've done a pilot a year ago. That's when we launched it. It was started, I think, in January. And we launched it in the German-speaking region of Switzerland. So several shops, a dozen producers, and we created 100,000 unique IDs of those. And I think a few, chunk of that were put on physical bottles inside the shops. So we've been obviously looking at the numbers at the first scans, and I think most of those wines should be digested by now, so there shouldn't be that many left. Maybe they will become a collector item for the few ones that still exist, so it's worth exploring. But yeah, so that was a pilot, and now really the question is, what is the next stage? How can we scale this to other regions? And there are many angles to
So would this be an advantage for the Swiss Wine Association that you had on, and make this ongoing for the next wines?
Absolutely. I think the most important consideration for this project, and any project like that in general, is not to look at NFT or QR codes or labels or those very specific actions, if you want, is to look at the bigger vision. And one thing we observed is that it's first and foremost a question of digitalization. It's pointless to try to do NFT projects and blockchain projects before you have data, before you have the tools and platforms that allows to understand, to be digital and so on. And I think this is what we've seen in many projects on the market that have failed, is that they were like, oh, we need we don't have digital stuff, we're mostly pen and paper, but let's launch an NFT pilot. Out of the blue, we pay a contractor and he makes us an NFT smart contract, deploys it, and of course nothing happens. I think those projects don't work, don't exist in a vacuum. They need to be an extension of the brand. They need to be to essentially be a core part of the strategy. So the plan around that and the discussions we have is to help the Swiss wine industry think first and foremost about the digitalization of the wine industry, not about NFT, not about blockchain, but about how do we get a bunch of people producing grapes in mountains, pressing them and putting that in bottle once they fermented. How do they start thinking about digital technologies? And when you think about the opportunities of digital, there are many. We can talk about simply optimizing internal processes. For example, the way we manage data, the way producer manage lab records, the way they ensure they comply with different regulations, the way they track what happens when they use fertilizer or all those things, the more we can provide them tools to help them be more efficient at what happens in the field, the more we can help them reduce their costs, reduce their risk, reduce the efforts of managing all that data, especially if there are audits to be done. That's just one dimension, is the internal thing. But if you look at the full wine life cycle, we start talking about communication, marketing, awareness. How do those brands stand out, especially if they don't have the same budget as multi-million, thousands hectares producers that we see in other new wine regions? How can a small Swiss wine producer with maybe 5 or 10 hectares compete with that marketing budget? They don't have the skills, they don't necessarily have the budget. So the more we can help them, the better. And I think this is really the key message, is that this is a nice example, but it needs to fit into a Swiss wine 2030 vision. How is the wine industry going to look like? And I think the main opportunity and the most important one in the world we live in is embrace digitalization, from production to communication to sales, after sales, marketing, distribution, all the way to interacting with every single person.
So the sales is also a big part for a brand. And with this solution, with an NFT, you can bring the awareness to the customer. And big brands are already doing it, like Nike, Adidas, Lamborghini, Starbucks. They have a very good project. And how do you think this will help SMEs, small and medium enterprises?
Mm-hmm. Very good question. I think the trend that we've seen in the last 5 years has obviously been massive towards e-commerce, digital sales. People going more and more online to buy things instead of physical shops. So when you talk about products like wine, you don't have the friendly seller that spends time with you, try to understand your preferences, what kind of wine do you like, to recommend what is good for you. The problem of that is many small producers, they don't even have online shops. Most of the way Swiss wine producers are selling is they have their network of 100 customers. They come once a year, buy a few boxes of wine, and that's it. And a big chunk of the remaining wine is sold via very large distributors. We won't name them, but you can easily find those around your corner. And if you that's a big problem in terms of cost, because when you sell half of your production to one single distributor, you are very much pressed for the price. You don't have much room to negotiate, and you're very dependent on a single point of failure. So if for whatever reason they don't work with you anymore, that's a huge chunk of your income that disappears. So to answer your question, the very interesting thing happening as well is the more we can help smaller producer claim and own the commerce part, the sales, the distribution of their wine. On one hand, large quantities, but especially smaller quantities, the more we can empower them to really own the sale, the better it is. And I think, NFT blockchain technologies is a part of that. But if you go into a shop or if you go to a restaurant and let's say you're a Singaporean, you go in a restaurant, you find some real nice Pinot Noir from Neuchâtel, you scan it, you're like, oh, I really love this wine. Where can I buy it? how do you do that? You know, people aren't gonna search and explore and try to hunt down that wine. But if they could just scan the QR code and see nearby shops in Singapore or at least in Southeast Asia that might stock that same wine, and you can easily add it to your wish list, and you could and the brand benefits the most from that because they are involved and they can monetize or they earn part of that. That would be a huge plus. And this is the whole idea of putting IDs on products, because if the maker puts this ID, then he can control the interaction with the customer. He's the best person essentially to have this first interaction and can monetize that. If they don't, then once you sold 500,000 bottles via a retailer, it's gone. You have no idea who drinks them, who are what is the audience that likes your wine, who should you target or who should you communicate, what is the persona that likes this Alte Rebe Pinot Noir from Schaffhausen.
That's really great. Yeah,
I think,
and there you can help the sales a lot. And when you control the interaction with the audience, with the customer, that's really great. And you told us a lot about the project and how NFT can help the world. And what is your vision with NFTs, Vlad?
Yeah, excellent question. Not in terms of market and speculation, because that's not my business, but I think NFTs have been a little bit mislabeled, and many people, most people outside of the blockchain or crypto space, and even people in the crypto space, NFTs have a bad reputation. Like they're like, oh, it's this scam, it's monkey pictures and things like that. And I think this is really unfortunate because it substantially limits what NFTs are and what can be done with them. For me, an NFT is essentially a digital certificate of something. The something can be anything our minds can come up with. I mean, we've seen use cases of NFTs as tickets for a party, for a concert, for cinema, which is very, very interesting because you're turning something that's physical or something that's a QR code and owned by the retailer to something that has an existence on its own. So if you imagine that any, FIFA game final ticket is something that is programmable, and that's what NFT offers. It's an object that can be taken, transferred, you can stake, you can use it as a collateral to get a loan. When you start thinking about that, then you're adding DeFi capability to any physical object. That's just one dimension. I think we've seen interesting efforts in tokenization of physical assets or even digital ones, where you take valuable things. You mentioned Lamborghini, you can take a work of art, you can take anything that exists in the physical world. And if you look at funds, if you look at all equities in companies, and you start expanding that to NFT as a substrate to implement those financial objects, then you're not talking about the 1 trillion market cap of cryptocurrencies. You're suddenly talking about hundreds of trillions of equities and a big, much bigger market. If you look at real estate only, we're talking huge numbers. If any building, any apartment, any parking lot can be digitized, tokenized, and used. To come back to something maybe less financial, NFTs, the most exciting thing I've seen for NFTs, and you mentioned brands, you mentioned Nike and so on. I think the future of NFT is as well the personalization, the fact that you are a member of a community, whatever the community is. And I think this is very, very exciting, because if products, if everything that we see around us, if things that are intangible, such as a brand, I mean, what is the value of a brand, right? What is Nike? I mean, of course, there's the product, but all this intangible dimension of a brand is something that has a huge value. It's something that people can bet on. And I think if you take music, you have all those great artists. They might make music that is not mainstream and that is not the taste of everyone, but maybe there are 10,000 people who really love a band and they don't need 100,000 or millions of people to make a living. And this is something that's very interesting because you take the Spotify model where it's, you know, it's essentially, it's very Web 1.0. It's not even Web 2.0 because those companies are very much owning the entire transaction. They're owning the entire marketplace. And Spotify, it's a marketplace between ears and music, right? So the more we can decentralize those kind of platforms, the more the people selling on those platforms could, one, be in control of what they sell, to whom, under what conditions, at what price, and also get a much bigger chunk of every sale. And I think if you look at niche marketplaces, they take 80% of what you make, of what you sell. They give you the peanuts at the end, and they're the one making the money, not the people uploading content. And I think this is, you know, one of the future I see for NFTs is that you are essentially democratizing ownership of things, whatever they are, physical things or rights. Money flows around that, and you allow those things to be sold across any marketplaces. You know, and I think if instead of you have a pair of shoes or you have something valuable to sell, you have to manually add it on Ricardo.ch, on eBay. You have to add all those things yourself. Huge effort, huge waste of time. You will maybe just put it on Ricardo and leave it there and pay the X% fee once it's sold. But what if everything you had, you could tokenize your items and make them sellable on any marketplace at once? And I think this is what NFTs are doing. I mean, you're not obliged to sell your NFT just on OpenSea. You can sell them wherever you want, and then you decide on which marketplace your thing gets sold and which one doesn't, because if they don't respect your royalties, for example, then you don't want to sell through those. This is a very powerful movement.
And as you said, it's important to control their own content, to control their interaction with the audience, and also consumer engagement. Did I understand this right, Vlad? Yeah, absolutely. That's very important.
Yeah. I think control and ownership first and foremost. I mean, ownership to a large extent implies some control, but ownership is the most important. That you decide, you own something, you decide what can be done with it, not the people who have sold you that. And I think if you look in consumer goods, you buy something, you're very much stuck with the person who sold it to you. You buy a handy and then insurance or the manufacturer doesn't want to repair. It's a very frustrating feeling where, you know, you bought something, you paid for it, the full price, and then you're still kind of stuck with that item, and you don't have the liberty that I believe you should have when you buy something. How you use it, in what context you use it, once you buy. Otherwise, it's a different business model. Otherwise, it should be a lease, and then you don't own it, and then it's fair to have limitations. But once you buy something, it should.
That's really great, and NFTs will help a lot. Vlad, and there is another burning question I have, and I'm sure it is very interesting for the people who are watching the video. What are you and ZIMT doing? What are you offering?
Sure. Thanks for asking. So, as I mentioned in the intro, ZIMT is a Web3 studio. So we build products and solutions that make it much easier for companies to build blockchain-powered applications. So we are pretty broad in types of projects. We think blockchain technology and NFTs are very, very exciting, but they're very difficult, complex to use. So I think very few companies have the skills, budget to invest. So what we did at ZIMT is to build a very simple SaaS. It's currently in private beta, so it's live. We've been using it for the projects I mentioned. And the idea is that any company, any organization can create an account, start creating NFTs on multiple blockchains. So we have almost 10 different blockchains supported right now. We help them mint the NFT. We help them manage everything around the NFTs, the metadata, everything on-chain and off-chain. We integrated that into a very, very simple, easy to use web platform where you can just log in with your website. You don't need MetaMask, you don't need to buy crypto, you don't need anything. We just provide that on a SaaS subscription model basically, and that makes it very easy for anyone to mint NFTs and try to integrate in all sorts of use cases way beyond the ones we've been speaking.
That's very nice and makes the experience of the users to mint the NFTs much easier. That's great.
Yeah, and maybe an example of that, a project we've been working on recently, which uses our technology. It's a project where we are trying to tokenize the IP rights, so intellectual property of digital creations. And I'm talking about music, sound, videos, 3D model, architectural drawings, and so on. Those things right now are mostly sold through very few platforms, so it's a very monopolistic market where a few actors control the vast majority of the market, and they also take a big chunk from every sale because of that, because there's no alternative. So we've been exploring a project, and we also built a marketplace that is fully powered by cryptonomics, tokenomics essentially, for loyalty, for reward, and NFT, where any creator, any designer can create their content and essentially either sell the IP rights or sell a license to use the creation. And this is something very different from NFT marketplaces, because when you buy an NFT on a marketplace, the IP element is rarely clear. Some NFT projects now say you're allowed to reuse the NFT you bought, but the IP does not belong to you. You just have a license to use the ape that you bought in some context, but it doesn't really belong to you from a legal perspective. And this is what we've been exploring. How can we entirely tokenize intellectual property rights so we can create an eBay, if you want, for digital rights? So this is just one of the example of projects that was built with the ZIMT technology, which which we're commercializing. And as you mentioned, I would really love to explore with other organization or listeners how we can use blockchain technology for their own project. So we're very open to discuss that.
That's really great, and that will make the life much easier. Vlad, thank you very much. It was really very, very interesting, and I hope that the people who are listening, that they will buy soon a bottle with your NFT on it, and that they can check it. That's really very good. And for everybody who is interested in working with Vlad, you will find the contacts below. And thank you very much.
Absolutely.
And Vlad, it was a pleasure to have you here.
Thanks everyone. Same here. Thanks a lot, Georg. Have a nice one.
Thank you.